The rear wheel of this old Huffy Cranbook made a god-awful noise when it coasted. Just listen. Before I donated it to charity, I thought I should do something about it. I looked on YouTube for an easy fix. One guy sprayed the bearings with lubricant and showed that it worked for him. I know this wasn't the best idea because the lube can wash away the grease around the bearings, but I figured, what the heck, I got nothing to lose and I'd give it a try. It would save me from taking everything apart. I wasn't surprised when it didn't work. I'd never taken apart a single speed drive mechanism before, so I thought with that noise it was probably bearings most likely, or maybe brake shoes or something, or rubbing, or a broken part. So I figured I'd take it apart and look inside. What I should have done instead is watch RJ the Bike Guy's video on how these work, but instead I blindly took the thing apart. When I did, I couldn't find anything. I looked at the bearings. When I say bearings, I mean the bearing races. There's two large bearing races and one smaller. Two larger bearing races are for the coasting part, and the one smaller one is for the drive. And there's a clutch cone mechanism that has a spring that slides into the brake portion of it like that. The brake shoes that ride on a clutch cone go up and down as the springs go in and out. I greased up everything. I did watch one video. It wasn't the same mechanism that I have here, but what I got from it was the guy greased everything like crazy, so I thought it can't hurt. But I didn't put anything new in it. I thought, well, I'll give it a shot. Maybe it was just dirty, or I didn't have enough grease. Or maybe I washed some grease away after I put the lubricant in, but I wasn't quite sure. I figured it wouldn't hurt anything, so I put everything back together again, because there's really not too much to it. It's just greasier. It's more the grease than anything else. The grease does a good job of holding everything together, but I still regret not watching RJ's video about how this thing works. I would have solved all my problems, and I probably would have been done a lot sooner. That piece there screws into the other end of the cone drive. When you pedal backwards, this turns the cone drive inside, which pushes against the spring, which wedges the brakes up against the inside. You can see the large threads. And this is the smaller race. The cone nut goes on next. It presses down against the bearing. And then there's a keeper nut that goes on top that locks it in place. And you use a regular wrench and the cone wrench to lock it in place. I measure the distance on the axle between the top of the locking nut and the top, so that I have a reference point when I put it back together again. I do have a thin cone wrench to hold the cone while I'm tightening the locking nut on top with a regular wrench, but I didn't show it in this part of the video. It was wishful thinking on my part that greasing everything would take the noise away, which it didn't. I thought, duh, I forgot to measure the bearings. So I took it all apart again, and I measured the races, and I measured the bearings, and I ordered everything, then waited. After several days, the bearings showed up. I took it apart again, put in new bearings, put it back on, figuring my problem was resolved, but with new bearings, I still had the noise. By this time, I thought I should do a little bit more thinking into the problem. I realized when I was pedaling and it was coasting, if I pushed back ever so slightly, the noise stopped, even though it was coasting. So I realized it was probably the clutch cone in the brake portion that was causing the problem, and that the brakes were probably rubbing. So I decided to take it apart again, but this time I'd order a new clutch cone. So after waiting about a week or so, I disassembled everything again. When the new clutch cone came, I realized it didn't come with the spring. That was a bummer. The clutch cone body itself looked just like the other one, so I was positive it was the spring, but the only thing I could do was I took the old spring out of the old clutch cone and I kind of pulled on it a little bit and stretched it and put it back in the new cone, reassembled everything, and voila, it worked. So it's either the new cone, which I don't think it could be because it looked pretty much like the other one. It's probably just the spring was a little worn, and by stretching it out a little bit made it work. Well, at least that's my best guess. The noise finally went away after taking it apart multiple times, but learned a lot. Thanks for watching.